In World War II, women took a stand for their equality, their freedom, and their place in the working environment. Women in the 1930s were expected to be able to sew and cook for their husbands. They were in charge of cleaning the house, and only 25.4% of women were working, but that would soon change. The year is 1939. World War II has just begun. Surprisingly, the devastation of the war is just a newspaper story to Americans. Little did they know that soon it wouldn't just be in the paper. The attack on Pearl Harbor. In 1941, Pearl Harbor, the American naval base, was bombed by the Japanese. This caused mass panic in the U.S. The government had to decide whether or not to declare war. The U.S. declares war. When men were offered to participate in the war, women were left behind at home. Soon, this would reach a whole new level when the U.S. begins the draft. All men between the ages of 21 and 45 were required to join the draft. The U.S. was left in a state of chaos. Who would step up to take all the jobs that the men had left behind? Women. But this didn't happen immediately. There was a steady increase of women in the working environment after the draft. The U.S. began to encourage women taking over the jobs that the men had left. Women began to take a stand for their jobs. This created many iconic characters, such as Rosie the Riveter. Rosie the Riveter was first seen not in the poster, but in the song written by John Jacob and Reed Evan Lloyd. It was issued by the Paramount Music Corporation and released in 1943. The song was frequently played on the radio and was even broadcasted nationally. This was an amazing feat in American history, seeing as it was one of the first songs to encourage women in the workforce. Not only was Rosie the Riveter a song, but she was also a fictional character used to inspire women to get jobs. Her first debut was in the poster titled "We Can Do It." The poster shows women that they can be strong and become equal to men in the workforce. Rosie the Riveter is a major icon in American history, and she is still as popular today as she was in the 1940s. The percent of women in the workforce increased from 24.5% to 30%. Many women had changed their ideals from cleaning the house to working to support their country. Women weren't just working for the war effort. They were also working in iron and steel mills, textile mills, rubber factories, electrical manufacturing, apparel, and chemicals. Women took a stand for their jobs, and they got what they wanted. Now in almost every workplace, you could see a female worker. The roles of many women now included working in factories to create weapons and supplies for the war. Originally, factory workers were primarily male. Before the war, women were rejected for these factory positions because they were believed to be fragile. The women working in factories rewrote this stereotype, and they were starting to be seen as more powerful and able. This affected women throughout history and is still changing how the world views women today. Women weren't just working in factories. The U.S. was finally enrolling women in war. There were nearly 350,000 women serving in the U.S. Armed Forces in the WWII. According to the American Minnesota History Center, around 70% of women who enrolled in the armed forces worked in traditionally female jobs. They worked as typists, clerks, mail sorters, flew military aircraft, and analyzed photographs. Although these jobs may have been less glorified, women were essential in maintaining the bureaucratic mechanisms that are necessary in warfare. Not all women were working in traditionally female jobs. Many were breaking down the gender stereotypes of the time and joining the WWII. When women began joining the Army, they started the WWII, Women's Air Corps. They never went on the front lines, but they were closer to the fight than they ever had been. This was a big step for the U.S. Army in having men and women equal. There are many American heroes because of the women in war, such as Virginia Hall, an alleged spy, Elise Oat, a flight nurse, Betsy Heimke, a POW camp survivor, and finally Reba Whittle, a POW nurse. Some of these women were imprisoned at POW camps, such as Lieutenant Reba Whittle. She was the only U.S. female soldier who was imprisoned as a POW. Whittle was a flight nurse with an 813th Medical Error Evacuation Squadron that logged over 500 hours. On a flight from England to France to pick up casualties on September of 1944, her plane went off course and was shot down over Germany. The few survivors were taken prisoners. The Germans did not know what to do with Whittle since she was their first female military POW, at least on the Western Front. A Swiss delegation that negotiated POW transfers, mostly wanted prisoners, discovered Reba Whittle in custody and began to arrange her release. Whittle, who was officially ejected by the Army Air Corps in 1941 for being underweight, was allowed to minister to the wounded in camp. Whittle was escorted by the German Red Cross away from the camp along with the dying male POWs on January 25, 1945. She was just one of so many women who survived this harsh time. Reba Whittle was not the only female imprisoned in a POW camp. We had the honor of getting a live interview from the POW camp survivor, Betsy Heimke. She was born in the Philippines and was just 12 years old when she was taken by the Japanese.
We heard airplanes, and we thought, oh, hot dogs, the Americans are coming back. We're going to be freed. We won't have to worry. And then all of a sudden, we heard bombing. Boom, boom, boom. Well, you never left chapel until the service was over. And so Billy was quickly extinguishing the candles, and everybody left the chapel just as fast as could be. And my gosh, we looked above us, and those planes were not American, they were Japanese.
She recollects what she had to go through every morning.
Every morning and every evening we had roll call. And if it rained, we got wet. And if somebody did not show up for roll call, they made us all stand for motion on the playground, and the Japs would go in the barracks and make sure that that person was really sick and wasn't dead. And so that's why that person was not there for roll call.
It was truly heartbreaking to hear her first-hand stories of carnage and torture. As President Franklin D. Roosevelt said, there is one front and one battle where everyone in the U.S., every man, woman, and child is in action, and will be privileged to remain in action during this war. The front is right here at home, in our daily lives and in our daily tasks. He believed that the war effort was won by every man, woman, and child, and that it would not have been as successful without them. But some did not agree to this. Many disagreed about women working for a man's job after the war. Especially after the war, women were fired from their jobs to be replaced by men. Even if they were harder workers and more experienced, many companies would fire them to employ men instead. Throughout the years, women have taken a stand, but there hasn't been a more prominent era where women have taken a stand than in World War II. In World War II, they took a stand for their equality, their rights, and their place in the working environment.